leading you here, and then we will get into the topic, which is European dictators and the Second World War. Let's start it from that perspective.
Well, as you already said, my name is Alana McLaughlin. I am a sixth grade student at John Early Padilla Museum Magnet Middle School. I remain an honor roll student, which is all A's and B's, and sometimes maybe all A's, depending on how hard the course is. And so those are the basic facts about my education. Now, when you talk about my background, I am involved in many activities, such as at school, I'm on the debate team, and I think in about March, I believe, we had a debate championship where I was given the title the best debater out of all these children that we've been in debates with. And it's like 200 children from all around Tennessee. Like, some could be from Madison, some could be from Coffee County. Like, these are so many children from so many different places, and to be like the best debater out of all of them, not just the best in my place, but the best debater, I think that's something I feel like mentioning. And I'm also involved in the children's ministry at my church. I am what they like to call a senior acolyte, which means I've been doing acolyting for as long as I could basically understand what I was doing. And so those are some of the many things that I'm involved in, and I am also I'm about to be involved in derby, which is the art of skating. It's like a sport. And so, yes, those are some of the many things I'm involved in.
Very good. And so, Alana, the topic that you've selected, and I think our audience understand that most of these topics you select in a real sense, you've been able to bring us quite a bit of information in all of these topics. But we, again, believe that the one dealing with European dictators and the Second World War is a topic that certainly should have a lot of information, and we're hoping that you can give us that kind of information. When we talk about European dictators in the Second World War, what are we talking about when we talk about dictators? Who are some of these European dictators that we talk about?
Dictators are basically like rulers who make all the rules, who judge everything, who basically they own everything. They own you, they own the courts, the police. That's a dictator, a ruler of that area or that country or that, state. There could be dictators anywhere. I could be the dictator of this show. Because there are dictators everywhere. You may not know it, but that's the true definition of a dictator.
And so when we talk about European dictators during the Second World War, who are some of these European dictators that we're going to eventually talk about during the second part of this show, the second segment of this show? Why don't you give us sort of an overview of the dictators that you'd like to speak to?
Now, today we're going to be talking about Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mussolini, which are some of these dictators. Like Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany. These are all dictators, European dictators. And so that's what you mean when you call a dictator. Like, I know when most people think about Adolf Hitler or Stalin or Joseph, they think of, they're so mean, they kill people. And that's basically all they think. They just think there's somebody that went around and killed somebody. What they thought was that they were in a higher place of authority than the average person or the president. They thought that they were the ruler of it. They ruled everything. If you didn't dress the way they liked, you got killed. If you didn't do something that they liked, you got killed.
And so these European dictators that we're going to talk about after this first segment is over are people that you've identified as leaders of the heads of states. That is, they have the political situation under control, they have the judicial situation under control, the legislative situation under control, but now you want to deal with specific individual dictators, and those dictators include Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, and Mussolini. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break, and we will get into a discussion of some of these dictators that we've already outlined. Thank you. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is European dictators and the Second World War. And Lana has already identified several of the European dictators during the Second World War that she would like to talk about. And so, Lana, let's get right into this whole issue of European dictators by talking about some of the three dictators that you've already mentioned, and give us some information in reference to that, and then we'll build up on the information. And by the time we get into the third segment, we'll have quite a bit of information in reference to them. Go on, give us that kind of information.
Adolf Hitler. What do you think of when you hear Adolf Hitler?
Well, I think of the Holocaust. I think of the World War II. I think of just a number of things. I think of brutality. But what do you think of, and why don't you talk about Adolf Hitler?
When I hear Adolf Hitler, I think of Anne Frank, her diary, the struggles that Jewish people had to go through, the pain that they suffered, the concentration camps that they were found in later after the Holocaust had ended. And now, Adolf Hitler, when you have to expand on this basically, you can't just say, oh yeah, he made the Holocaust, da, 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 da. It was so much more than that, so much more than that. I mean, he killed many people. He took lives that didn't belong to him. And I mean, and he just took lives and took lives. If you did something, if you did the slightest thing that he did not like, you were gone. And so that's what I think of when I hear Adolf Hitler. Now let's expand more on who Adolf Hitler was and why he is such an important part of this show today. Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany. He was born in Austria and died in Germany when he was assassinated. Now, he was an aggressive person growing up. He always was, and he grew up to be. He was the leader of the Nazi Party. What do you think of when you hear Nazi, the word Nazi?
I think of Adolf Hitler again, and the leader of the party. Go on and speak to it.
Now, Nazis were a group of people who basically thought that they were better than everybody else. Like, if I happened to walk down the street and I walked across a Nazi, I would get sneered at. I would probably get pushed or teased or laughed at because of the color of my skin, because I was African American. But luckily, I've never crossed over a Nazi. And now the Nazi Party is still, I don't really want to say alive, but still, they're not they're active, but they don't cause riots or anything, I believe. They're a party who think they are in a higher class of everybody else. Like, there's low class, middle class, higher class, and then there's them. That's what goes on in their head. And they think that God sent them on the world to be better, basically, that they're supposed to be better, and they're supposed to mistreat people who aren't like them or who aren't them. And so that's what you think of when you hear the Nazi Party. But now let's focus on Adolf Hitler. Now, this man who was famous for the Holocaust, most people think that his actions, his aggressive foreign policy, is what caused the Second World War. He thought that he was so much better, and that when he caused all this ruckus, that's what people think of when they think that he started the Second World War. And do you think that's true? Or?
He did. He actually started the Second World War in 1939.
In 1939.
By the invasion of Poland. Go on.
Exactly. And he liked to see this. He liked to see him having power over something or somebody. I mean, because if he didn't have power, then he would be mad, and then he would assign somebody to be killed for his own personal pleasure. But I just can't see how someone would enjoy seeing millions and millions and millions of innocent people. I mean, these people weren't criminals. These people never did anything to you. They were innocent people that got killed for what they believe in, what they look like, their orientation, what they were. If they weren't Adolf Hitler, if they weren't part of the Hitler family, then they were apparently nothing to
Why don't you give us some examples of some of the killing and some of the tragedies that Hitler caused the Jewish people? Anne Frank, for example, or something. Yes,
the most famous death that happened in the Holocaust was Miss Anne Frank. She had a diary, and she kept all of her experiences about the Holocaust in that diary. And when she had passed away, her father found the diary, and he planned to be able to, and he made sure that that book was published and that everybody got to see how horrible the Holocaust was. And that's what he did. It's been published in almost all languages. It's so many languages like German or English. And so, yeah. And so that's how important Anne Frank was to the Holocaust, and and she's basically the most, she's what people think of when you hear Holocaust. You think, you immediately think of the Diary of Anne Frank. You just right on the spot. And she was so much more than that. She wasn't just an author. I mean, she didn't even plan to be an author. She was just a regular girl who kept a diary.
Very good. And so in a real sense, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of these dictators, and I think you've indicated that a dictator is a person that controls the government, the political government,
the ruler of
everything, and et cetera. And now, what do you think over the last 2 minutes that we have during this segment? What do you think that were some of the most destructive things that dictators did outside of actually killing people?
I think that was the worst thing that they did. I mean, they killed people, they ruined families, they separated families. They did so much to these people, to innocent people that didn't deserve this. And they were killed because of what they believed in.
Well, if you looked at these dictators, how would you classify them in terms of how they suppress folks' freedom and their citizenship and perhaps their right to vote? Did they control that aspect of the lives of
people? Yes, they took away every right that the people in that country had. They took away the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the right to citizenship, and the right to be able to be a citizen.
To be free.
To be free, right.
And in a real sense. And so in a real sense, these dictators that you've identified in Europe during the period of the Second World War, you've identified Adolf Hitler as perhaps one of the leaders in a real sense because of the...
but he is nothing compared to Stalin and Mussolini.
So, and that's what we're doing. We'll get ready doing this next segment. We'll come back and we'll talk about the other two dictators that you've identified, Joseph Stalin and Mussolini. And then that will give us, during this last segment, an opportunity to pull all of this together and come up with some general statements in reference to dictators, European dictators during this particular time. Because I think that that's essentially what we're trying to get at, that while this happened a long time ago,
it is
that
still
the
important
idea
today.
of freedom,
Exactly.
the idea of citizenship, and the idea of voting is still a very, very vital. And of course, we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you, and welcome back to the final segment of the show for today. We're talking to Alana McLaughlin, and she has given us some information concerning European dictators during the Second World War. And now she will continue her discussion in reference to those dictators. Why don't you pick up where we left off the last time, Alana?
Now, if you're just tuning in, we on the first two segments, we talked about my background in education. I'm Alana McLaughlin, 6th grader at John Early Museum Magnet Middle School. And in the second segment, we talked about Adolf Hitler, the Nazi Party, and how he basically was the cause of World War II. Now, in the third segment, I told you that I'd talk about Joseph Stalin and Mussolini. Now, let's start with Stalin. he was, when you rank these three men, basically Mussolini would be like kind of the man in the middle. Like he wasn't, well, not Mussolini, but Stalin. I mean, he wasn't like the worst dictator, and they'd never be the best. But I mean, like in these three, like rating them about how bad they were, Adolf Hitler would be at the bottom, then it'd be Stalin, then it'd be Mussolini, because Mussolini basically caused the most trouble. Now Stalin, he's basically the same as Adolf Hitler, but in a different form, had a different mindset, and so many other things wrong with him. Now, Joseph Stalin actually grew up a fighter. Like in his, when he was a teenager, he had a history of being reckless, and he used to bully children, and even in church, he'd make children cry. He'd pinch them just for the fun of it. And he actually got kicked out of the school for stabbing somebody. And then the next school he went to, he also stabbed somebody. And then he openly admitted to stabbing his girlfriend in the arm. And these other people, he stabbed them in the hand. I mean, think of how painful that must be. And then he openly admitted that he stabbed his girlfriend in the arm. So he grew up a violent youth, and then grew up to be an even more violent person. So those are some of the fun facts that I learned about Joseph Stalin over the weekend. And now let's get into the real stuff. Now we talk. So when you talk about European dictators? If you're also just tuning in, a dictator is basically like a ruler, a person that controls everything, the government, the police, the court. He controls everything, and then dictator also took away something from citizens, three things from citizens: the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the right to be free, and the right to be a citizen. They had no rights. It's basically like how African Americans were in segregation, but much, 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 much worse. Because, I mean, when African Americans, they were beaten to death, and I mean, the Caucasian community didn't really care. I mean, because that's what they thought should happen to us. But back in Joseph Stalin's time, I mean, it was so much worse. They put them in concentration camps. They torture them, behead them, kill them, shoot them, slaughter them. They do so much to these people, all because of what? Because they were Jewish? They didn't do anything to you, but because they're Jewish and you don't think they deserve to be on this earth, they don't get to live. I mean, who are you to say that somebody doesn't get to live or does get to live? I mean, what? And so, yeah, it's kind of a comparison. Like, blacks and segregation is almost how Jewish people were to the Holocaust and World War II, and all these dictators taking away their 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And now Mussolini. This man was a bad person. I mean, and he was a dictator, and he was just like Adolf Hitler and Stalin, but everything that they did, multiply that, he killed tens of millions of people. And I mean, that's what they all did, but why? What did they do to you? Did they steal something from you? No. Did they shoot your wife or your children? Oh, by the way, Mussolini had 7 children. Fun fact about him. But anyway, did they shoot one of your children? No. Did they try to steal one of your children? No. What did they do to you for you to kill tens of millions of your own people? You're supposed to be the guardian of these people, but you are just some evil being that decides you're going to kill them because they're not like you and because they don't want to follow you. And so I don't believe that's right. I don't think that's right at all. That's horrible. And it really hurts me to see all these people getting killed for no reason. I mean, why?
And Lana, I think one thing that certainly deserves to be talked about and pointed out here is that while we talk about these 3 dictators, you certainly want the audience to know that wherever you look throughout all of the continents, that you're going to find similar kinds of individuals. And these are some individuals we just wanted to identify as European dictators during the Second World War. We could have, I think you understand, could have gone to Africa. You've talked about dictatorships in Africa, in South America, and et cetera, and et cetera. So we don't want to leave the impression that dictators only exist
happen in Austria or Europe. everywhere. It's bullying, basically. I mean, bullying is, if I just kicked you right now, that would be bullying, because I'm putting my hands on somebody else. If they didn't ask you to put your hands on them, then don't put your hands on them. I mean, killing is a type of bullying, and it happens everywhere. Being made to work in farms, bullying, you beating them, whipping them like the slaves were treated, bullying. And it's a matter of how big it is or how small it is. Small, getting pushed down in the hallway, that's kind of medium. You killing tens of millions of your own people, that breaks the scale right there. That is the worst type of bullying. I mean, like dripping slow acid on somebody's skin was a method of torturing, which was banned by the U.S. But anyway, that's something that they used back in that kind of era. And so that's a type of bullying. You killing them and doing all this to them because what? Because they're Jewish, or because they're black, or because they're not like you.
Well, Lana, look, in terms of all of this, these dictators that we've identified in Europe, and as well as the rest of the dictators all over the world, what are some of the things that you can tell people of your age this morning in terms of how they have to react and how they have to act to one another, so that not only they might understand more about these individuals, but also be able to have a better attitude toward one another and toward parents and their relatives and etc.
Every school you go to, I mean, you can't just say this school doesn't have bullying. I mean, you may not know it, but every school has bullying. Every class has bullying. I mean, I want to say to children my age, I mean, if you see it, then tell somebody. I mean, because I know I've heard children say, like, if I saw bullying and I told a teacher, they were like, oh, you a snitch. I mean, that's not even the right definition of snitch. Snitch is telling fake stuff about another person just to try to intimidate them. That's not being a snitch or being a tattletale or whatever. That is being truthful. That's being a good-hearted person. So that's why I want to share children my age, because they're being influenced by all this music and all these people that tell them, oh, don't be a snitch. Snitches get stitches or whatever. That meaning snitches get cut for telling or whatever. I mean, I doubt that, and if you do, then you will die knowing that you did something good and that you helped somebody and that you potentially stopped that was something that can turn into a bad situation. And so that's what I want to tell children my age. I mean, don't think you're going to be a snitch, you're going to be attacked because you tell somebody something. Tell a teacher if you see something.
The topic is Islam, politics, and terrorism, and we have as our guest Dr. Leonard Madu. Now, Dr. Madu, let's simply give you an opportunity to pick up where you left off during that second segment, because all of this information is so very, very revealing, leading to our involvement with Islam and with politics and terrorism. Go on, pick that up.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the myths we have today, you know, is that the Islamists, you know, are the precursors of terrorism, you know, in the world. But that's not true. You know, the fact is that because of 9/11 and subsequent events, you know, their own activity have been amplified. But if you go back a little bit to the 70s, 80s, 90s, there were a whole range of terrorist groups that are not Muslims, okay, you know, that don't have any identification. For example, the individual who introduced airline hijacking was a man called Dr. Elias Wadi Haddad. He's a Christian, you know, who lived in Mogadishu, belonged to the Palestinian group. He's a Christian. The leader of the most vicious Palestinian group at that time, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, was Dr. George Habash. He's a medical doctor and a Christian. You know, he's not a, listen, the Japanese Red Army, you know, that attacked Israel in 1972 at Lod Airport, was led by a man called Kozo Okamoto from Japan. He's not a Muslim. You had the Italian Red Brigades that assassinated Prime Minister Aldo Moro. They are not Muslims. You know, you have the Irish Republican Army that assassinated Lord Mountbatten. You know, they are not Muslims. In Peru, you had the Sendero Luminoso, you know, Shining Path. They are not Muslims. You have the Tupameros you know, guerrillas in Uruguay. You know, they are not Muslims. You had the Monteneros in Argentina. They are not Muslims. And all these groups, you know, were the precursors of terrorism all over the world. You know, so most people don't know that, because at that time some of these groups were either urban, you know, concentrated in one country, or the international activities weren't really that threatening to our governments to intervene, or we are using some of them. You've heard of Carlos Gijaco, you know, from Venezuela, who kidnapped, you know, all the OPEC ministers in Vienna. He's not a Muslim. So this is very important to understand in the light of what is happening now. You know, that we've had these groups, you know, perpetuating terrorism all over the world, who are not Muslim affiliated or Muslim related. In fact, some of them were sponsored even by Western governments, you know, to carry out their will. You know, so one will ask, well, why do Muslims have to be, you know, tagged as the only terrorists in the world? It's just because of the political dimensions of what is happening now, and it's because it's religious affiliated. You know, most of these terrorists that I've already mentioned are secular, what we call secular terrorists. You know, the difference is that it's a religious terrorist. And of course, when someone, you know, gets on religion, all of us get very sensitive. Very good. You know, and that's very, very critical here to differentiate the secular terrorists and the religious terrorists. You know, so this is very important, because most of the religious terrorists use religion as a form of political expression. You know, the secular terrorists have, you know, a stated objective, which might not be political, but at the same time, you know, have a goal, limited goal. You know? So that's very important to understand and be able to differentiate. What should our policy be, you know, towards, you know, Islamic countries? I think the current policy being pursued, you know, by our president is very sensitive. You know, I do not think we should have a confrontational, you know, attitude towards Islamic countries, because most of the Islamic countries are not against the United States. You know, yeah, we have good relations with most of them. Indonesia, for example, they receive a lot of money from us. We receive a lot of oil from Indonesia. You know, countries like Malaysia, they're not against us. You know, Pakistan, even though you have all, you know, Al-Qaeda and all this hiding there, we still, you know, trade with them. We give them a lot of funding for their military and all this. Yeah, India, there are 160 million Muslims, like I said, in India. We are very friendly with India. We are cooperating with them on, you know, a lot of their nuclear facilities and all this. And you name it. Before we fell out with Iran, you know, they were good friends of us when the Shah was there. Yeah, when the Shah was there, they were good friends of us. We were friends with Saddam Hussein before, you know, he turned, you know, against us. Egypt, the largest Muslim state in the Middle East, you know, in the Arab world, has been a very good friend of ours. They still receive almost $3, $4, $5 billion a year from us since, you know, the sign of the Camp David Agreement. Jordan, the king of Jordan is a very good friend of the United States. Even the King Hussein, who died, you know, was on the payroll of the CIA. You know, yeah. Kuwait, went to Kuwait to liberate Kuwait. It's a Muslim country. Okay. Yeah, Kuwait is a Muslim country. We have bases in Gaza. You know, that's where some of our biggest bases are that we invaded Iraq from. It's a Muslim country. Yeah. So we have good relations with a whole lot of these Muslim countries. So the policy being pursued now by the president, you know, is a sensible, you know, policy, you know, based on realities and dealing with the issues based on individual countries, not lumping all the countries together as if we are at war with Islam or it's a crusade like the Bush government was talking about, you know, yeah, the Christian crusade. And this is not what it is. It's not a Christian crusade against Muslims. You know, we are not crusaders. It's simply, you know, that you had some terrorists, you know, from a particular country, you know, that tried to destroy this country, you know, by way of bombing the World Trade Center. And even if you look at it logically, all the terrorists who did this came from Saudi Arabia. But yet, we are the best of terms with the monarchy in Saudi Arabia. Okay? Our president just visited over there and met with the king and all this. So one should think about that. That's why a lot of people get confused. if all the terrorists came from Saudi Arabia, that's where we should be focusing.
That's right.
Exactly. Okay, that's what we exactly. That's where we
If
should
that's
be.
what we're looking for as the terrorists.
That's correct. That's where we should be messing with, not Afghanistan or places where they didn't come from. So that's very important to understand. You know, these things have a lot of links and threads attached to them that you just can't separate one and say, forget about this. They are all linked. And the President Obama is doing a good job now of trying to calm the tensions. You know, when he went to Cairo and spoke, it was very good. It was well received. You know, we are a powerful country. Everybody knows we are the most powerful country in the world. And messing with the United States, you know, you are taking a chance. You know, so we should show humility and say, hey, we can talk to you all, not just beating up on everybody. But then don't mess with us. If you do, we got something to take care of you. And I think, you know, a big man should be able to, you know, talk to a small person and let that person understand. I'll work with you, but don't mess with me. Yes, like somebody who is, you know, 150 pounds going to mess with Muhammad Ali or George Foreman. You know exactly what the consequence will be. Yeah, so it's just the same way. We are big enough to be able to say work with you, but at the same time you should understand we have the capacity and ability to deal with you if needs be. You know, so that's exactly the policy we should be following. It's a policy of accommodating Muslim interests, you know, or any other interest, at the same time protecting our own interests. Yeah, you can accommodate somebody's interest, at the same time protect yours. You know, you don't need to destroy somebody's interest in order to accommodate yours. All of us have interests, you know, financial interests, educational interests, business interests. All it needs is just to accommodate others' interests, because others have interests. Other countries have interests. You know, it shouldn't be all our own interests. We should understand they have interests, work with them to protect theirs while we protect us. For example, now Pakistan has interest in protecting its own nuclear weapons. We have interest in making sure that those nuclear weapons don't fall into the hands of terrorists in Pakistan. Okay, so our interest is to make sure to help them financially and keep an eye that doesn't fall into the hands of terrorists, while at the same time making sure we deal with the terrorists in Pakistan. We can do all of them at the same time without antagonizing, you know, the population. And that's what is sensible about our current policy.
And of course, Dr. Madhu, we're nearing the end of this show for today, and we've got less than a half a minute. But again, let me thank you for bringing by that excellent information. And I think that it falls in the same category with what you gave us in reference to Afghanistan, Iran, and all of those other Middle East, as well as African countries. And I was surprised to learn of the large number of Muslims in Nigeria, you see, and et cetera. But nevertheless, we certainly appreciate this information. And let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning. Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is But God Ministry. And we're fortunate to have with us to talk about the topic But God's Ministry, Pastor Kay Walker, and along with Pastor Kay Walker is Miss Antoinette Duke, and with Miss Antoinette Duke and Pastor Walker is Miss Russell. And of course, let me welcome you, Ms. Russell, Ms. Duke, and Pastor Walker to the show this morning and tell the three of you how delighted we are to have you here dealing with the topic that you wish to talk about this morning. Let's start off, Pastor Walker, by having you to give us some information in reference to your background, your education, and some of your experiences. And then we'll do the same with Ms. Duke and Ms. Russell. You will be able to sort of give us the same kind of information in reference to your background, and we'll be able to sort of make our audience familiar with the three of you this morning, and then we'll get back during that second segment dealing with But God Ministry, the ministry that the three of you wish to talk about this morning. Let's start off with you, Pastor Walker.
All right, Dr. Haney, thank you, first of all, for allowing us the opportunity to come on here. I've been on here many a times, of course, and I'm Pastor Kelvin L. Walker, pastor of the Hands of God Christian Church, located in East Nashville, 600 North 2nd Street. Educated right here in the state of Tennessee, the public school systems up until all the time I wanted to be educated. I put it like that. Ended up getting kicked out of the public school system. My story is, I went to the Navy, got a GED when I got out. Spent a little time at Tennessee State University, studied some things. Trevecca East Campus Prison Program when I was incarcerated. I went through there as well. Did a little bit of Edmondson Junior College also. But not degreed in anything, but have a measure of knowledge on many things. And it brings me to the stage right here to be able to share the stage with these young ladies in the ministry that they're involved in. Would like to say also that my wife, who's not here, is a member of the board of But God Ministry, and I'm so excited about it because it's fulfilling to her, and it's exciting to me. I support her 100% in this endeavor because it allows her to see her purpose, and that's why I'm here today with these young ladies.
Very good. Ms. Duke, what about you, your background, some information in reference to your situation?
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here as well. I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama, 8 girls and 5 boys, and currently hold a master's degree in organizational leadership and a master's in business administration. That has led me into a field of service, human resources, and that's particularly what I find most impactful as far as what I'd like to accomplish in life is just serving. It's a choice, and that's what I choose to do.
And Ms. Russell, what about you, background, education, and some of the your experiences?
Yes, sir. I am a Nashvilleian. I'm an East High graduate. I have a master's from Tennessee State University, strategic leadership and planning. I am employed at Metro General Hospital, where I'm a senior financial counselor there, and I cater mainly to the indigent in the community, and that is a very humbling and honorable experience as well. So I'm glad to be here today also. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Pastor Walker, you know that this is a topic that I think that is worthy of our consideration today. Why don't you make some statements in reference to it, and then during the second segment, I understand that Ms. Duke is the creator in a real sense of this organization, and then we'll come back during that second segment and allow her to start us off talking about how how she created the organization, and then Ms. Russell will be able to join us during that second segment. Let's start off.
Dr. Haney, as I said earlier, that I support this ministry 100%. Again, my wife is in it. She's fulfilled in being in it. I see the joy that she has as a result of being a part of this because it gives her an opportunity to express service, and they do a lot of things that I'm excited about, I'm glad about, and happy to see. Because, when you think about first ladies in the churches, they sometimes are in an awkward position. Sometimes they're the most loved and respected, and then at other times they're the most despised and rejected. It's a situation where sometimes they're cursed if they do and they curse if they don't. Somebody's complaining that the first lady's doing too much, and then somebody's complaining that she's not doing enough. So, to see them develop a ministry that caters to first ladies and give first ladies an outlet to express what is really inside of their heart to do in terms of ministry, and not having to be running around in the church trying to figure out how to do this and how to do that, but to actually get involved in ministry themselves and make a difference. And I believe it's a beautiful thing just to sit back and to behold all of that, Dr. Haney.
Very good. Of course, we're getting ready for our first commercial break, Ms. Duke. And when we come back, we understand that you are the creator of this organization, and we'll allow you during this second segment to give us some information in reference to how this organization came into being and perhaps your motive and your inspiration in a real sense in bringing this organization to us this morning. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Thank you and welcome back to the second segment of the show for today. The topic is But God's Ministry, and we're fortunate to have with us Pastor Kay Walker, Ms. Duke, who is the creator of this program, and Ms. Russell. Let's start off this second segment, Ms. Duke, by having you to give us some information in reference to your inspiration in reference to creating such an organization called But God Ministry.
Well, I'm really excited about it, and I just have to say that it's not about me, but God. The ministry was created because of three similar concepts that I think we all kind of encounter: pain, problems, and people. And the end result was, but God. And so through a guiding scripture, Psalms 41:10, it just talks about, but you, O Lord. And I just remember reading that scripture and knowing that early on, there was a lot of focus on the pain, the problem. And then I saw in that one scripture where it says, but you, O Lord. And from that was the inspiration that as long as we keep our focus on other things and not God, it will seem like it's pain, problems, and people. But the result should always end with, but God.
But God. And of course, I would imagine, Ms. Russell, you would buy into that. What are some of your statements in reference to this whole idea of the ministry that you're involved in, Ms. Russell?
Well, I have to say, Antoinette, of course, we're good friends. And she came to me, and told me what, God had laid on her heart to do. And in, telling me what she wanted to do, I wanted to be a part of it because in this particular ministry, it really helps define my purpose in life. And that is serving. I have a will to serve. And like Pastor Walker had mentioned earlier, whatever, a lot of times being the first lady in a ministry, in a church, you're kind of condemned if you do and condemned if you don't. But in this particular ministry, our motto is, of course, to serve. And like I said, it has really been fulfilling for me to do that, going out into the community and serving on various ministries, children, the elderly, and that but God.
And of course, this is the ministry that you wanted to bring to us this morning, primarily because you believe that it has some impact not only on your church, but it also has impact upon the members of the church itself. Is that what we're saying?
Exactly, in
That's
the
right.
community.
That's right.
Absolutely. You know, Dr. Haney, it's important to realize that when you're dealing with first ladies in the church, a lot of times, you know, and there's this thought process that's out there in the body of Christ that, well, if the husband is called in the ministry, then the wife is automatically called to be a pastor. So they come up with this created title called co-pastor. I don't know where they got it from, but it's there.
The scripture
Yeah.
is that way.
It's out there and it's existing. And I think a lot of times some of the women are pushed into that spot because of the non-existence of a but God ministry that now exists. So now here you got a ministry that first ladies can tap into. And it's open and available to all first ladies that, you know, that have a sincere desire to serve. First of all, you got to have a servant's heart, you know. It's just not something, it's not a social club, it's not a gathering place, it's not something that you do when you don't have anything else to do.
Right.
It's something that you do because you have a desire to serve God's people, you got a desire to please God, and there's a measure of integrity that goes into this process as well. So this is what I'm seeing with But God Ministry. That's why, you know, I lend my 100% support. I even got, you know, my little T-shirt on the other day because I understand the importance of it and what's happening with it.
Now, is this open to first ladies of any church who wishes to become involved in?
Absolutely.
And what are some of your recruitment techniques and your recruitment methods, and how successful have you been so far?
And actually, this ministry is designed to provide and equip resources to help develop, build, and grow. We call it a ministry that's twofold. We use senior pastors' wives and widows to help coordinate events within the community. But we ask for and we welcome committed volunteers, which does not require you to be a senior pastor's wife or a widow. If you believe in service and serving, we want you to be a part of this team. And so what we've done, we actually have a conference that's coming up October of this year, and it's just open to any denomination that believes in the Lord Jesus Christ and want to serve. So whether you're a senior pastor's wife or whether you're just committed and want to be a part of the ministry, the opportunity is there. We just use senior pastors' wives to coordinate those activities in order for us to be available to go out in the community to serve.
Now, Ms. Russell, now what are some of the activities that you're involved in terms of trying to bring more of the first ladies of the church into various churches into this ministry?
Well, actually, some of the programs that we've had already, we fellowship with the Disciple Village with the senior citizens. We went in and had a dinner, you know, just for them. We've worked with a ministry that caters to the single parents. We've done some, we had a diaper drive and, you know, had some toys and stuff for some of the children and ministries like that. So it has just been a great experience for me. And then another thing too, you know, like it's just brought a camaraderie together from very, very great ladies that through this, without this, I would not have had the opportunity, you know, to meet some of these ladies. So again, and like she said, we're having our conference that we're really